Sometimes the world looks perfect, nothing to rearrange. Sometimes you just get a feeling you need some kind of change. Standing tall on the wings of my dream, rise and fall on the wings of my dream. Rain and thunder, wind and haze, bound for better days. It's my life and my dream, nothing's gonna stop me now.
All right, welcome to TGIF. Tanner Grover invites friends. It is day number 15,568 of being me. And sometimes, I reflect back on my life as a whole. I grew up in a small, quaint town of Booth by Harbor, Maine. It exists, as a tiny murmur almost on a peninsula. And I think about this reckoning of a charmed childhood. Some might refer to it as a fables of the Reconstruction, something that exists in, life's rich pageant. But there are times where I think you might be able to boil it down into a singular document, something as simple as, say, Boston Celtics green. I've always been passionate about ball. But there's part of me that thinks that I'm running out of time to achieve something great. I like to consider myself automatic for the people in some regards, but I have this burgeoning monster inside of me to get out there and experience some new adventures in high five. But, I think things are looking up. It might be all part of the big reveal, and I'm always grateful for another trip around the sun. I'm ready to accelerate into the future, but today I am just happy to collapse into now with a person who believes in good schools for all kids, hoops, tunes, and other important things. It is a pleasure to welcome in what you probably know as the lawyer, advisor, the manager of my personal favorite band, R.E.M., but there's so much more to him, and to connect with him on a level of friendship is a true honor. Mr. Bertis Downs, what's the frequency, Bertis?
I didn't quite catch. I'm very happy to meet you and be on your show, and to find out you're from Booth Bay Harbor, Maine. I've been there a couple times, and it's a pretty idyllic, beautiful spot, no question. But I didn't quite catch what the question was.
Yeah, it was. I ended with what's the frequency, Bertis, which,
Yeah,
feel
that's why
free
I
to
didn't
answer
catch it.
however you like.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's a beautiful day, and despite whatever else is going on in the world, healthy and reasonably happy. So that's my frequency, I guess.
So one thing I do on this show is that I always establish my DOF with all my guests. So I interview a lot of old friends, people I've known for a long time, and it's really easy to establish that with you because the DOF, the date of friendship, really begins today. I mean, I'm meeting you for the first time, and I reached out to you with this story of yeah, basically having an opportunity to go to an R.E.M. show back in 2008, and then I felt ill with pneumonia and couldn't go, and kind of felt like it was a lost opportunity, something I'll never get back. But I thought that maybe getting the chance to speak with you today might I don't know, reconcile a bit of that for me to a degree. But I guess one thing I want to ask, just knowing what very little you know about me, do you have any initial first impressions?
Well, no, other than the technology was not cooperating for the first couple of minutes. We were trying to make this thing work, but now it is. Where was the show that you missed in 2008?
It was Manchester,
Yeah.
Massachusetts.
So I'm
Yeah.
guessing that's great. What used to be known as Great Woods, and then the Verizon Center. It's the shed down south of Boston. So it would have been a considerable distance for you to drive. I mean, you have to get all the way down to Boston and then keep going for another 45 minutes with traffic. We played it a
Yeah.
couple times. It wasn't the only time we played. Uh, Again, what was used to be called Great Woods, and I think that was the tour where the Modest Mouse and the National were the opening bands. So that was a great bill, as one would say. The National's since gone on to great heights. It also reminds me of a thing that happened to me with the disappointment about missing a show, and that involves one of my career artists. It's hard to say. I'm walking for a minute. This is just audio, right? Not video, too.
It's both. It's both.
It's both. Okay. Well, I'm walking right now. It reminds me of something that happened to me my junior year of college. Sorry, freshman year of college. So this would have been the year 1975. Wait a minute. 1974 is when I started college. This was Thanksgiving of 74. And I had never seen who'd become my second core artist of my whole life. The first one had been the Allman Brothers Band. All through high school and into college, I was a pretty massive fan of the Allman Brothers Band, starting at about ninth grade. So 4 years later, I'm off at school in North Carolina, and I'd heard that this guy I'd been hearing for about equal amount of time, and I liked him more and more. And he had all these great albums out. He had Harvest out, and he had After the Gold Rush out. And I had tickets to go see Neil Young at the Fox Theater in Atlanta. And the Fox Theater in Atlanta is far superior to whatever shed there is in the country to see somebody. And I had tickets. I don't remember if they were good seats or not, but they were in the theater of about a 4,000 seater to see Neil Young, whom I'd never seen. And I was obviously pretty psyched. So I get home from school, like on the whatever it was. I think it was the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. So I get home from school, and my mom, who was a single mom and pretty, she was a single mom for three boys. I was the oldest, but we were all pretty challenging as kids. She'd forgotten to cancel my wisdom tooth extraction appointment the day of the show. So I think it's pretty hazy memory 52 years ago, but I get home from school and, oh yeah, you've got your wisdom tooth appointment with that guy tomorrow. And I'm like, no, I want to go to the Neil Young concert. She goes, well, your appointment's in the morning. And I'm like, yeah, but from what I hear, wisdom tooth, and this was extracting 4 wisdom teeth that were impacted with, it was not what they would be doing now, which is anesthesia and proper surgery. This was like, I mean, it feels like, in my memory of it, it was like a guy with a wrench going in and yanking these 4 teeth out. Needless to say, I did not go to the show that night. And my best friend came over. I'd gotten 2 tickets, and I just handed him the tickets because obviously I could not go to see Neil Young in that condition. But don't worry. A year later, Neil was touring in the States with Stephen Stills, and they were called the Stills Young Band. And they only, best I could remember, they only put out one record, or one anybody still remembers, and it was called Long May You Run. And that was a Neil Young song. There are also some Stephen Stills songs in there. And Long May You Run was a beautiful, folky, could have easily been on Harvest as that kind of Neil Young trademark sound. And I once again had tickets. This wasn't in as great of a building. It was it's fun remembering these things. It was in the Omni. The Omni was the big, enormous hockey and basketball arena that they had concerts in. So Neil is set to play with the Stills Young Band in Atlanta, and I've come home from my summer job in South Carolina, and I'm sitting at my kitchen table, and I hear on the radio, because we didn't have internet, and we didn't have social media, and we didn't have texting, just the good old radio station that said, we have some not good news right now from Atlanta. Neil Young has abruptly canceled the Stills Young appearance at the Omni tonight and the entire tour. And it came out later that he had somehow left a note for Stephen Stills. I'm pretty sure this is historical and not made up, but he'd left a note for Stephen Stills at some point, a day or two before the Atlanta show. Sometimes things that start off spontaneously end that way. Eat a peach, because they were in Georgia, where the Allman Brothers, never thought of the full circle of that, but Eat a Peach was the name of the album the Allman Brothers put out a few years earlier. And so Neil just up and left the tour. They didn't do the tour. That's not totally uncharacteristic of him throughout his career. He does things like that. So once again, I didn't get to see Neil Young. And I finally did what would have been, I guess, 7 years later, when I was a first-year law student in 78. He played the Omni on the Rust Never Sleeps tour. And I took my little brother, and who was still in high school. And I finally saw Neil Young after 2 times trying to see Neil Young, and he's had a nice long career ever since. And I've seen him a bunch of times, probably more than any other artist. R.E.M. Sorry for the long story, but when you said that about missing the Great Wood Show, I'm just sorry that that was the last tour. They aren't going to likely, I'm pretty sure they're never going to do it. And they've said they're never going to do it. And I believe them. And it's been now 15 years since it's been almost 18 years since they did their last show. Their last show was November of that same year, just before Thanksgiving in Mexico City. So I'm sorry that you missed the opportunity to see them. I'm sure you've seen a few things on YouTube. They were certainly a great live band and are still great guys and still great friends. So sorry for the long answer. You know, when you get someone who used to teach law school, we're trained to speak in 50-minute increments. So at least I came up a little short of that. But that just reminded me of like something in my own life that was similar to what happened to you and the disappointment of missing R.E.M. In 2008.
Yeah, it was it's funny. I also, by the way, had 4 impacted wisdom teeth myself, so I feel
Were
you
they
on
taken
that.
out in the dental chair when you were 18 years old with no freaking anesthesia?
No, I was 20 and I had anesthesia. Um,
Well, mine
but
took
yeah,
about, from what I remember, and this is not, I mean, it was like a 6-hour ordeal. He had other customers that day. He didn't think it was going to take 6 hours, but it took 6 hours. And it was, it was, it was medieval. It was really badly handled. And God, you know, I, I wish we'd done things. I wish I just called and can. If it was now, I know as an adult, you just cancel things like that. You call and say, "Look, something's come up. I'm not able to make it, and let's deal." And instead, I was like a little boy. I was like, "All right, I guess I got to go. I'm not gonna probably not going to see Neil Young." I was pretty bummed, but anyway, there you go.
yeah. Well, I want to stick with music just for a little bit before we transition to another common thing that we can talk about. And you mentioned that like Neil Young is obviously like I would have to say one of your favorite artists
Oh
based
yeah,
on
yeah.
how you speak about him. But I'm wondering, what are you listening to now in terms of like current music? Because I'm just curious what you're a fan of.
Um, Probably more than I'm going to be able to think of, just kind of here on the spot. Um, but I still love the U2 stuff they're putting out. Um, I mean, they put those 2 EPs out, both by surprise. One on Ash Wednesday called Days of Ash, that had an incredible song and video. And if you haven't seen Yours Eternally, it's co-written with kind of an unusual choice, but Ed Sheeran and U2 and a guy. His first name is something like both names start with a T, and he's Ukrainian. And it's not a name I'm familiar with, but he plays in a band that figures very prominently, I will say, in the video. And it's current day Ukraine watching the news. It's a pretty incredible piece of work. Both the song, which is what it obviously matters the most, but the video, uh, I don't think U2's even in the video, but it's pretty very very good song. And then they put a second EP out a couple of months later, again, but totally by surprise. These guys have been in the studio now a couple of years with Jackknife Lee, a good friend of ours, and the producer for R.E.M. and a bunch of other artists. Um, and so we knew they had a lot of things coming, but they've got these 2 EPs out, and then they're coming soon with an album. I don't have any particular information on it, but I'm pretty sure it's impending. They've been talking about it on their social media. So I still love listening to U2. I mean, U2's been around a little longer than R.E.M., but they're still slugging it out. They're still out there. Pretty sure they're going to tour on the next tour. Uh, Next time they put out a record, and that'll be a while. And then I still love The Cure. Admittedly, to me, their early stuff, they hadn't put an album out in a while till a couple of years ago, which they won all kinds of awards for, Songs for a Lost World. And those guys, I mean, they started in 77. I went to their 40th anniversary concert. They started like when they were still in high school in Crowley, England. And I went to their 40th anniversary concert at Hyde Park. It was the first time I'd actually gotten to see them because all those years they were kind of peaking or putting out hits and playing festivals. Somehow I never crossed paths with them. We'd play a festival on a Friday night, and they would play that same festival on Saturday or Sunday. So we just never really got to see the Cure as fans. And I've just realized how special that is as a band. And okay, it's not current music, but they're still going, so that makes it pretty current. They're on a big tour right now in Europe. Everybody's hoping they're going to come back to the States again. In terms of like, there's a couple of artists around Athens, Georgia, where I live, that are really good. They're somewhat, I guess you would have to call them obscure, but they put out great music that is streaming and that people can find their records, and they certainly play more in the Southeast rather than national tours. But one is named Thayer Serrano. That's Sarrano, Thayer Serrano, and singer, songwriter. Um, I don't know what category it would be in, but it's beautiful melodic music and kind of dark, but incredibly talented writer. And I've known her probably going on 20 years now. And then similar generation, again, a good bit younger than me, but not right out of college either. Hardy Morris, Hardy Morris. He was in a band for a long time called Dead Confederate, who opened for R.E.M. in '08 in Austin at the kind of legendary Stubbs Barbecue show that R.E.M. played during Austin City Limits. No, it wasn't ACL. I think ACL had something to do with it, but it was during South by Southwest. And it was the spring of '08. And at that point, they were this young band from the South. They were called Dead Confederate, super rockin' band. His solo stuff, which he still puts out on New West Records, it is much more singer-songwriter, acoustic based, just has a real ear for melody, and an awesome voice. He's a really good singer. So those are two current bands that are from my hometown, which is how I know about them. And then finally, there's a band that a friend sent me kind of a tip about and said, you would love this band. It's like the perfect band that is right up your alley. It's like a cross between R.E.M., Neil Young, and Teenage Fan Club. And Teenage Fan Club's another band I still love, even though they've been around a while. And they are called Brown Horse. And they're tiny in terms of, you look at what their Spotify numbers are, you know, how many people follow them. That it's not like they're of massive popularity, but it's really good music. And if that's kind of your angle, or, you know, it's kind of Americana sounding, even though they're from Norwich, England. These are all people, they look to be roughly in their 20s, maybe early 30s. And there's 5 or 6 of them in the band, 4 guys, 2 women, and their entire Spotify biography. You get to write a little paragraph about yourself. You get to, you know, put a review or whatever you want to say. They have a 2-word Spotify biography: slacker twang, and that kind of sums them up. So if that sounds of interest to any of your listeners or yourself, go look up Brown Horse and just play, you know, a few songs. They have a fairly recent record out that's quite good. The one before was also really good. So that's kind of some of the things I listen to now.
Yeah, yeah. No, I would say, I mean, for me, Slacker Twine, I like the sound of that Brown Horse.
Yeah,
I would
you
definitely
like
check
it.
it out. Yeah, yeah. It's funny. So, you know, I always describe R.E.M. as my favorite band of all time, and it was, you know, introduced to me really by my mother at a young age. And I remember
Hey,
being, you know, apparently 3 years old. I was in the backseat of her station wagon, singing along to Superman, you know, and then I really like, all right, you know, I grew up in like the MTV era with music videos, and
oh yeah,
losing, losing my religion was super popular. Obviously, it was like a cultural phenomenon, but I was also mixed in with, you know, Nirvana and Pearl Jam, and I was, you know, I'm 42, so I'm like kind of old enough to remember the grunge movement, you know, and then kind of the fallout from when, you know, Nirvana dissolved, however you want to phrase that. Um, and then I really didn't like truly get into REM till I was about 20. So it was like, you know, 2002, I want to say 2003.
yeah,
And all of a sudden, like the kind of like that pop boy band era, or even if you want to call it, oh, emo, whatever, there was that whole
yeah.
scene going on. And I was looking for something else, right? Just something different that, because none of it was really, you know, speaking to me in a sense. And Coldplay was probably the band that started to emerge around that time that I was really kind of drawn to.
Me
And
too. They were writing some really good songs at that point. Those first two albums by Coldplay were killer.
yeah, I agree. And then Modest Mouse and Death Cab for Cutie kind of became a thing. But then I was, kind of just kept coming back to R.E.M. because I think I got their their greatest hits album, which was the
Oh
one
three.
year.
That came out
Yeah,
in
oh,
03. Yep.
yeah, I got it like, as a stocking stuffer. And then, I really started to talk to my mother about them. And she's like, well, you realize, they had like 6 albums before Out of Time,
That's
and
right.
I'm like, okay. And so I went into a record store and I bought Murmur, and I just played it on repeat. And
That's
so
a
it's
good one
like,
to start with. Yeah.
yeah. And then I just was like, all right, I'm a little OCD myself. And I'm like, I'm just going to go in chronological order. I'm going to go and I'm going to buy Reckoning. I'm going to buy Fables. And I kept going, you know? And right up through, I think Around the Sun had just come out. I went all the way up through the entire catalog. And then I became obsessed with the idea of like, all right, the next time these guys tour, I have to see them. And they come out with Accelerate. And, it's described as like a whatever return to
Return
form.
to form. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, which I don't buy personally. I don't buy any of that because I think,
Colbert asked him about that and said, "Doesn't that just piss you off?" And Michael answered and went, "Yes, it does." he used that same phrase. Everybody's calling this a return to form. Doesn't that just piss you off? Anyway,
yeah, well,
yeah.
I don't know because I also, I was,
It was more rocking. Around the Sun was a quieter record, and it was more esoteric, and it was just a different vein. And Accelerate definitely had more guitars. You can't listen to Living Well and Horse to Water and Man Size Wreath, and it was just so. Whether that's a return to form or just a more rocking album, I mean, people are going to have their opinions and write them, and I don't think any of that really got under anybody's skin that much.
yeah, well, and I don't know, I was in college at the time at the University of Southern Maine, and I'm a media studies graduate, but I took a lot of music related courses, because I was just interested in it, and I'm not musical at all. Like that part of my brain doesn't work. I couldn't tell you anything about music theory, how to write stuff. I just kind of know what I like. But I studied like REM, like almost, and I feel like in my life, I've taken like I call it like the REM ethos, where it's like, we're going to be uncompromising. We're going to like share credit amongst ourselves. We're going to continually reinvent yourselves, right? And so, like in the terms of like, return to form album, I just don't buy it. I
Yeah.
think it's like here they are just trying to continually evolve, and I try to do that like with whatever I'm doing. And so, um, speaking towards that, I want to transition a little bit into basketball because that's how I'm known in my community. I was a high school basketball coach for 5 years, and I know that you have a passion for hoops yourself,
Very much.
and we have a similar story about Red Auerbach, and I want you to maybe just kind of talk about your Red Auerbach story.
Well, and I don't have any Brian Barr stories, but I would certainly be interested in yours about. I think he has a nickname at Davidson, and it alludes to his appearance as super white. I mean, the guy has really really blonde hair, or I don't know exactly, but he's got a nickname around Davidson where he played, where I went to college, and
The
he was
White
a
Lobster.
the White Lobster. Yeah, yeah. Anyway, yeah, because he was a schoolboy legend evidently in Maine, and then totally different time than right now. He came to Davidson, played all 4 years. I think he played alongside Steph, if I'm not mistaken. I think
They're
he and Steph
roommates.
were okay. Yeah, so yeah, they were very close. And now he's still. I mean, I've been traipsing around Maine at different times, and somebody will see a Davidson shirt or wear, and they'll say, "Do you know the name Brian Barn?" I'm like, "I certainly do. I know all about him, or I know something about him. I don't know all about him." Um, so my Red Auerbach story is pretty straightforward, which is that when I was somewhere in the 5, 6 year old range, maybe 7, 5, 6, 7 year old range, we were living in Taiwan. We were the uh, what became three sons. Two of us moved over there. One was born while we were in Taiwan, so he could never be president. My youngest brother, and my dad took the two oldest boys, and I guess I'm going to just guess we were 6 and 4, so I would have been first grade. My younger brother would have been preschool, and we went to this big, what seemed like at the time, huge arena. It might have been a gym, I don't know, but to us it was huge because we were little kids. And the Celtics, my dad was really excited because he was really into basketball. He'd gone to Davidson, and that's when Davidson had a legendary coach called Lefty Driesell, and Lefty Driesell had eventually gone on and coached at Maryland. He coached Len Bias at Maryland, who was drafted by the Celtics and died that same night of a sad, tragic situation. Long story short, this is 1963 or so, and I'm 6 or 7 years old, and we go to this big arena in Taipei, and the Celtics are barnstorming around Asia, I guess, which is how they got to Taiwan. So they're on a jet. I guess probably been a private plane of some sort at the time, and they're touching down in Taipei. They're touching down in Japan. They're touching down in Singapore, and they're just on some kind of a. I guess I don't know how the economics of that worked. I didn't think about it at the time, but they're there. These are real, live, breathing Boston Celtics players. I don't exactly remember who they were, but it was some of the real stars of that era. So the early to mid '60s Celtics, which were winning how many championships in a row, or 9 out of 11 or something like that, and Red Auerbach, the coach, and they were there just doing an exhibition, kind of like a clinic. And I also remember I think my brother and I were pretty much the only non-Asian kids there, which was interesting because we lived there and we went to school with all Asian kids. We were kind of used to it, but at this big, huge public event, we seemed to be the only expats there, at least that we noticed, or that my hazy memory from all those years ago is. So that's made me somewhat of a lifetime fan of the Celtics. If they're not playing the Warriors, I'm definitely pulling for the Celtics. Although I admit the Jaylen Brown thing has kind of thrown me off. I may be pulling for the Sixers a little bit too this year, like a lot of people that have affinity to Boston. But yeah, that's my Red Auerbach story. I got to see the Celtics at a very early formative age, and it certainly affected my loyalty of when I care about the NBA. It includes some love for the Celtics and the city. I mean, I love Boston. I have one of my daughters teaches school down there. So.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, let me tell you mine real quick. So,
Yeah.
the first game I ever went to, I was 3.5, and I went down to Boston Garden. That was still
went to a game.
Yes, went to a game.
And you remember it?
Yes.
Wow, that's impressive.
And so it was me and my father, and so I have spinal muscular atrophy. I use a wheelchair, and to get into the handicap seating area at the Boston Garden, you actually have to use a different entrance. You enter through a separate building. You take an elevator that is then connected to the old garden, and
Right.
So we get there. We get in the elevator, and the doors open up, and there's this older guy in there, and we go in, and I look up at him and I just say, "Hey, are you the elevator man?" And he goes, "I guess today I am." And it was Red Auerbach.
Wow.
And that's my first Celtics
Did he have
memory.
the big cigar? Did he have a cigar?
In his pocket. He had a cigar in his jacket pocket. He had a sport coat on, cigar in the pocket. And he hit the button on the elevator and helped us out. So that was my first Celtics memory.
That's pretty cool. Wow.
Yeah, and then years later I go on to actually coach. So I don't know. I mean, you said you've been to Booth Bay, so you must be like a little bit familiar with the area. Have you been to like downtown Booth Bay Harbor?
Yep, I've been there.
Yeah, so as you're driving in, the school sits up on a hill, and then across the street is our YMCA. And so, my routine all throughout grade school with all my friends is after school, you had two options. You could go home or you could go to the Y. And so, we went to the Y, and that's where a lot of my classmates would play basketball, and I couldn't play but wanted to be involved. And so I ended up studying the game at like a very young age and like coached some of my peers. So what you see there in the opening montage that I put together, we won the state title my senior year. It's the only one in school history. And, you know,
The Booth Bay High School team.
yeah, in 2001. Yep. And so everyone's rushing the floor, and it was up in the Bangor Auditorium in front of like 5,000 people. And it's a,
That's
very,
huge.
very fun
And is that a
memory.
certain classification of the state, or is it the overall state?
No, it is the classification. So we have four, now it's five, but we had four state championships back then. So Booth Bay is a Class C school.
Okay.
But
So
we were the underdog in that game, and it was
you're
kind of an
competing against other schools the same size, roughly the same size.
yeah, 225 to about 400 kids.
Total in the whole high school.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
I would call that a small high school. The big public schools in Athens are more like 1,800, so more like that number, 400 kids per class. But that's just they're big public schools in a bigger city now. But yeah, Booth Bay, that doesn't surprise me that it's. I mean, yeah, the small town high school, is that as small as the high school that Cooper Flagg went to in
No, nope. So
Newport?
right, you went to oh gosh, Nokomis High School, which is in
Right.
Newport. Yep,
Yeah.
and they are, oh geez, they're not double A, they're A, I believe. And I want to say there's probably maybe 600 kids in
Okay.
that school.
So still pretty small. But then he went down to IMG or something for his last 2 years, and obviously was going to outgrow any small town anywhere.
Yeah, yeah, it wasn't IMG. I can't remember
I
off the
think they
top
went
of
down to
my
Florida.
head.
Oh, Montverde.
Yes,
Montverde, one of the other basketball academies.
Kevin Doyle was the
Yeah.
coach. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. So you were
yeah.
coaching your own senior class the year they won.
So as a like student assistant, I
Right.
was, and
Right.
then later on went on to become a girls varsity coach at Booth Bay Regional High School, like
Oh,
years
cool.
later. And I did
Cool.
that for 5 years, and we won a regional title, and then lost a state championship one of the years I was doing it.
Wow.
It was just a total honor to
Yeah.
do that.
No kidding. That's great. That's great.
Yeah. So listen, I know your time is kind of limited today, and I want to just get to maybe a couple of other, questions if that's cool. And so one thing I have a passion for is film, right? And I attempted to write movies in college, and I did write a little basketball related web series once upon a time. But one thing I do in Booth Bay now is I rent out our local theater once a month, and then I show a free community movie to the public. It's not very expensive to rent it out, and I just kind of
And
do it together.
what kind of movies are these you're showing?
So it's honestly, it's just my own curated selection, and there's a part of me that does it maybe for selfish reasons because I'm getting to see movies I've never seen
Of course. Yeah.
on the big screen before.
But you might show, but these are Hollywood releases. You could show a movie I've never seen is October Sky. I know I should see October Sky, but I only watch movies in theaters. I don't watch movies on my screen. I do other things on my screen. And so if I was going to do exactly your idea, I would show October Sky because I want to see it and then invite my friends, So it sounds like a
Well,
great idea.
That's exactly what I wanted to ask because I'm curious. If you were to attend, what kind of movie would you want to see? And October Sky is a great answer. I saw it when it came out.
I've still
And
never seen. I don't. Since I only see movies in theaters, I only see a few movies a year because, I mean, you got to be in the right city on the day that the movie's playing at a convenient time that you don't already have other things booked, and you feel like seeing a movie tonight. Or the other night, I went with my wife and we saw The Odyssey. I read enough reviews to know I need to stop reading reviews and just go see the movie. I did. I loved it, but I never would have watched that on my computer or even on the home TV screen. I'm only going to see that in a theater. That's just that's just how I choose to spend my time. But another movie, I would love to see the film made by a guy I know a little bit, not much, but he's an English guy who made a movie called The Making of Wish You Were Here. Do you know what I'm talking about? What Wish You Were Here was a Pink Floyd album. and it was
Yeah.
the one that was really dedicated to the guy who had sadly departed the band, named Sid Barrett, who was one of
Hmm.
the original members, who, uh, under pretty well-known circumstances, there have been books written about it. He departed the band with significant uh, brain damage from overuse of drugs, and it was the saddest thing because these guys were incredibly bonded as a unit ever since they were schoolboys, um, all through college, all through getting pretty big as artists. This was around the same time as the Beatles, and then having Dark Side of the Moon come out, which was a massive hit. Still one of the. I mean, at some point, it was like the biggest selling record in the world, maybe until Michael Jackson, in the age of vinyl, um, and then The Wall, and then somewhere in the aftermath of all that, they released an album called "Wish You Were Here." And the best I can summarize it without ever having seen the movie yet, but I really want to. I've seen squibs of it. I've seen previews of it. It's about that despite all their success they were having and how popular they'd become, they still really missed their friend. And I get sad thinking about it. So that's a movie that it would be top of my list of a movie I'd want to see, um, if I was doing your idea of renting out a theater and just and showing movies to the community. Anybody who wants to show up, it's a great idea.
It's a fun, communal experience. And, winters are long here in Booth Bay. I haven't done it during the
Yeah,
summertime. We've been on a bit of hiatus. But we're going
yeah.
to start up in September. And, I try to really make an evening of it. Like I hand out little scorecards and like get, feedback from people that give recommendations.
Well,
And
that's
we'll have an open mic kind of Q&A to get people's thoughts. And, what I really try to do is I try to get a lot of young people into the
yeah,
theater. So I always put it out to the high school. I let them know what movie we're showing. Sometimes it's appropriate, sometimes
yeah,
it's not.
yeah.
But I let the
Oh,
parents
that's
make
you
the
bring
decision.
people together.
I try.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like
Yeah.
you do. How many? What on a great night for that? How many people show up?
But so, all right, I'll tell you this story real quick, and then I get one final question. So back last November, I showed Best in Show,
Oh
and
yeah,
so
yeah.
yeah, so I did a phone call or a message actually from the local bartender. We have one kind of pub that's open year round in Booth Bay. And she says, "You'll never guess who just walked into my bar. John Michael Higgins." All right. And this is like 3 days before I'm showing the movie. So John Michael Higgins, he is in a relationship with Michael McKean. They're the two, um, gay dog walkers,
Okay,
right?
right,
And she's
right.
like, and so she tells him, my friend is showing your movie on Sunday. And so he goes, "Oh, give me his information." So she does, and I don't really think much of it. And I was like, "What do you think I should do?" She says, "Just send him a DM on Instagram." So I do, and he writes back. And he's like, "Hey, I have a cottage in Damascata, but I'll come down and give a little Q&A after the movie." And so I put that out
Awesome,
there, and we got about 75 people to show up. And
awesome.
yeah, it
That's
was
awesome.
cool.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Um, my only brush with Best in Show is my family insisted while we were on vacation in New Hampshire. Um, Dad, you have got to see this. We're all dog people. We have a bunch of dogs. And they're like, you've got to see this movie Best in Show. I said, well, I only watch movies in theaters. You know, I don't watch movie on. And we all got some popcorn, got something to drink, and sat down and watched on our TV screen Best in Show. And I have to admit, that one was worth seeing no matter what the format. It's right up there with the best movies ever made, and the kind of movie I love watching for entertainment. Well, that's so cool. So the guy showed up. He just happened to be in Booth Bay.
Yeah, it was just
Wow.
a
Um,
cosmic coincidence. So I
well,
always tell people,
put "Wish You Were Here" on your list if you have any interest at all in Pink Floyd, but certainly on your theme of friendship and loss and just unrequited. I don't know, the human condition. I think it would be really strong. It's a documentary, so it's got a lot of archival footage, but it's also got some then contemporary reflections. But it's on the process of the making of that album and how it came together, and it's right up there with their very best stuff. Um, for what it's worth. Callie, one other thing you just said about all that. But I'm really glad you're doing that. What a neat series. That's a very public spirited minded thing to be doing, and I'm sure people appreciate it. That's really neat.
Yeah, well, it's a lot of fun doing it. So and who knows? Who knows who might show up this year? You just never know.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, I got one final question
Okay.
to ask. It's something I ask all my guests. So, in 2008, my grandmother passed away from lung cancer. She was 78 years old. And so, when she was on her deathbed, she said something that I found kind of profound. And she said, my one regret in life is that I never allowed myself to have an ice cream sundae every time I wanted one. Now, she literally meant an ice cream sundae, but I've kind of taken it in this metaphorical sense. And so I'm asking every guest, what is your ice cream sundae? And you can answer it any way you want. You can actually have a legit answer. You could just talk about what fulfills you, maybe something that's on your bucket list. But I'm curious. So, what's your ice cream sundae?
Well, first of all, I like ice cream for sure, and of course, I'd love to eat it anytime I wanted to, but then it would not lead to the kind of good health I'd like to have. So I try to go. My grandfather, who I was very close to, he was my dad's father. I have his name. I'm Bertis the Fourth. He was Bertis Jr. He would have ice cream every once in a while, and he lived till 93. So I try to have ice cream every once in a while. I don't have it every time I think about it, but I don't regret that because I'm reasonably healthy. I wouldn't mind being 10 or 15 pounds lighter, but I'm not on the jab. Um, but I mean, I could be, but I'm perfectly happy being healthier than if I had ice cream every single day. So that wouldn't be it. I also don't believe in a bucket list. I hate that term. No, I don't. I don't really use the word hate. I don't like that term, even especially among younger people like yourself, or really young people. I'll hear a 25-year-old say, "Oh, it's on my bucket list." Like, if I go somewhere I really like, I want to come back. And I just turned 70. But I don't want to think, okay, I finally got to go to Ukraine because somehow in the last few years I've become really interested in Ukraine. And I now know a bunch of people in Ukraine that have been studying in law school in Athens that we've um, gotten to know really well, these law students, etc. But there are plenty of other places in the world I've still never been that I would really like to go to. I've never been to Tasmania. I would really like to go to Tasmania. But do I need to say, okay, I'll go to Tasmania now that it's struck off my bucket list? I'll never go back. No, I just don't think that way. I just try to think, uh, as much as I can in the present. But I do kind of have a general plan of like what's probably happening in the next little while, but then have to be there's I guess when we used to open for a band called the Police, we did that for one tour about 2 weeks. The year after, right after I got out of law school, went up for a clerkship in DC, and the band opened some East Coast dates for a massive band at the time. They had the biggest song that's still a huge song called Every Breath You Take, and a bunch of other albums. And they had I've read it somewhere in like a memoir or an article about them. They had a term they called flexible strategies. You got to have a strategy and you got to be flexible. That's maybe a truism, but like many truisms, it's generally true. And so I try to approach things strategically and with a decent amount of forethought, but be ready for whatever comes next and how you might react to it, and figure out ways to solve new problems.
I, I love that answer. I think that's
I
really
have no idea
profound.
if it answered your question. I don't think it
Oh,
did. I didn't give you my ice cream sundae, but
no, but in a way you did because you're just talking about allowing, I don't know, not overthinking um the future and kind of
yeah, yeah,
taking things as they come. You
but trying to
know,
be ready for it. I have a question for you, Tanner.
sure,
What is day 15,568? I think I've worked out in my head without being all that good at math. It's the number of days you've been alive.
correct.
Okay. Well, the
Yeah,
only thing depressing about that is for me, and it's not really that depressing. I just told you my age. Mine's about double you. I'm not quite double your age, but you know, I'm thinking I'm somewhere in the between 25 and 30,000, but is that a good or a bad thing? I mean, I'm, I think I hope it keeps going for a while. I hope I get much higher than that. Um, but who knows? That's a really neat, provocative, thought-provoking um, part of your signature brand or whatever. That you know how many days you've been alive and how each one of them counts.
Yeah, well, I want these conversations to, exist, not just as a moment in time for the guest, but as a moment in time for
Yeah,
myself. So it's kind of
yeah.
unique to,
You don't have a
hopefully,
conversation every single day, do you?
no, I mean, I do, just not on here. But,
But your
but
program, you don't record one of these episodes every single day.
no, 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 no. I record about 6 a month. So,
That's cool.
uh,
So, between 1 and 2 a week, that's pretty neat. It's pretty
yeah,
neat. Well, I
yeah,
really appreciate it. It's been a very enjoyable hour. It's gone pretty fast. I do have something at exactly noon, so I'll sign off.
yeah, yeah. Well,
But
let me sign off. I just want to, I want to thank everyone who's taking the time to listen to our conversation. I hope you found it, informative, insightful, entertaining. Maybe it was just background noise for you. However you want to consume it, that's perfectly okay. But thank you for hanging out with us. And Bertis, I want to thank you for being a friend.
thank you. And I forgot to ask you because I'm wearing a T-shirt from the movie. Have you ever? I just happened to be wearing this today. It was the one that came over. This is the one that I put on this morning when I got up. Um, could you read that? Has anybody seen the Big Lebowski? Have you ever seen the Big Lebowski?
Oh, we will be showing the Big Lebowski at my movie club sometime in the near future, but it's
I
one of
think you
my all-time
should. You probably
favorites.
don't want to tell the high school students about it. That might get everybody banned and in trouble and DEI and all the junk going on. But the Big Lebowski, it's one that I did see on a plane the first time, and I was like, I see why this thing was so freaking fun. I mean, it's just, and I know T Bone, the guy who did the music for it, T Bone Burnett, and I don't know the Coen brothers, but I've since realized how great of films they make. But that one just kind of hits every possible mark of a perfect movie to me. Um, and weirdly, I saw it on a I saw it on a plane, came back home with my best friend, and we had the sweaters and everything by then. I'd gone on the Pendleton website and bought the ugly sweaters, and we showed it at our local theater, and we invited our friends. And we must have had probably 80 people in the room. It's a bigger town than you have. Uh, and it was just a free showing of the Big Lebowski on some afternoon with White Russians, of course. So I'm glad you're aware of that movie. I'm not surprised. You're kind of a movie guy, but that would be one that I think would be pretty popular in your town. So
Yeah, well, we should all aspire to be, little Lebowski urban achievers.
yes, the Urban Achievers, exactly. All right, I'm sorry to keep going, but this was a very nice conversation, and I appreciate it, Tanner. Thanks to everybody for listening, and you know, enjoy your day.